Welcome to The Explainer. All right, today we are building a digital fortress, literally from the ground up. We're going to break down everything you need to know about defensive security so you have a solid blueprint to protect what matters most.
So let's start with the big question. Why does any of this matter? Well, look at this number. We're talking billions with a B. That's the staggering cost of cyber breaches every single year. The stakes? Yeah, they have never been higher. A rock-solid defense isn't just nice to have anymore. It's absolutely vital.
Okay, so where do we even begin? Well, we've got to start at the very foundation, understanding the weaknesses. You can't build a strong fortress if you don't know where the cracks in the armor are, right?
So what exactly is a vulnerability? Well, at its core, it's just a weak spot, any little crack that an attacker can use to get in. And here's the thing, it's not just about buggy code. It could be anything, an unpatched server, a really bad password policy, or, that one employee who gets tricked into clicking a sketchy link. Literally, every single layer of a business has these potential openings.
And check this out. This is where things get really interesting. This shows how threats can jump from the physical world right into the digital one. An attacker can use something like a USB rubber ducky, and your computer just sees it as a normal keyboard. But it's not. It's injecting malicious commands at superhuman speeds. And here's a huge misconception. A lot of people think, oh, I'll just disable USB storage drives. Nope, that does absolutely nothing to stop an attack like this. Okay, so knowing where you're weak is one thing, but that's just playing defense. If you really want to get ahead of the threats, you need a proactive blueprint. You need a game plan for managing risk and making sure you can bounce back when, not if, an attack happens. And this is super important. Effective risk management is never, ever a one-and-done checklist. It's a constant cycle. You're always identifying what could go wrong, you're assessing how bad it could be, you figure out how to respond, and then you monitor everything, all the time. Because the second you stop looking, I guarantee the threat landscape has already shifted.
So how do you structure all that? Well, a lot of organizations turn to the NIST cybersecurity framework. It's a really powerful way to think about this whole cycle. It's got these 5 core functions that give you a repeatable process for managing security, taking you all the way from identifying your assets right through to recovering after a big incident. And when things inevitably do go wrong, these metrics become absolutely everything. Your RPO, or recovery point objective, that's just asking how much data can we afford to lose. Your RTO is how fast do we need to be back online. Then you've got MTBF, which is all about how reliable your systems are, and MTTR, which is about how fast you can fix them. These aren't just geeky acronyms. These are fundamental business decisions that literally define how resilient you are.
Okay, so we have this high-level blueprint. Now we've got to translate that into concrete rules for the day-to-day grind. This is the part where big ideas and strategy actually become action. We're talking policy and compliance. And it is so important to get this distinction right. Think of it this way. Policies are the what. They're the high-level rules, like all users must have a strong password. But procedures, they're the how. They give you the step-by-step instructions on how to actually do it. You absolutely need both because, let's be real, a policy without a procedure is just a wish. And for any of these policies to actually work, they can't just be collecting dust in a binder somewhere. A good policy has to be enforceable. It needs to be easy for people to understand. And this is the big one. It has to have clear, visible support from the top, from leadership. Without that buy-in for management, it's just words on a page. Nobody's going to follow it. All right, let's shift gears and talk about the most complex, most unpredictable layer of them all, people. Technology is one thing, but people, they can either be your absolute weakest link or, if you train them right, your strongest line of defense, the human firewall. And the data on this is just crystal clear. Look at this. Over half of all security incidents involve an insider. Now, that doesn't always mean you have a mole in the company. A lot of the time, it's just an honest mistake, an accident. But it really drives home how critical that human element is to your entire security posture. And you better believe attackers know this. That's why they so often try to hack the person, not the computer. One of their go-to moves? Creating a fake sense of urgency. They pressure you to act right now before you've even had a chance to think it through. They also love to use fear. I'm sure you've seen it. That email that screams, "Your account has been compromised. Click here now to fix it." It's designed to make you panic. It plays directly on our instinct to protect ourselves, and it tricks us into making a really bad decision.
And another classic, impersonating authority. An email that looks like it's from the CEO or a phone call from someone pretending to be from IT support. It's amazing how easily that can trick people into skipping all the security rules they normally follow. So these mind games, these psychological tricks, they show up in a ton of different ways. We've all heard of phishing, the generic emails, but there's also spear phishing, which is super targeted. There's vishing over the phone, smishing through text messages. Even physical stuff, like leaving an infected USB drive labeled payroll in the parking lot, or just tailgating an employee through a secure door. It's wild. Okay, so we've covered policy and people. Now let's get to the outer layer of our fortress, the tech. This is going to be a quick tour of the massive toolkit that defenders use to watch, test, and protect their systems. When it comes to the network, visibility is absolutely everything. You need to see what's going on. That's where tools like Wireshark come in, letting you do a super deep analysis of your traffic. You've got things like the Wi-Fi Pineapple, which can hunt down rogue access points. And kind of watching over the whole thing, you have your intrusion detection and prevention systems. Think of them as your digital guards on the wall.
So, IDS versus IPS. What's the deal? The key difference is right in the name. Detection versus prevention. I love this analogy. An IDS is like a watchdog. It sees an intruder and it starts barking its head off. It sends you an alert. But an IPS, that's the bodyguard. It doesn't just bark. It sees the threat and actively steps in to block it.
You know, one of the best ways to build a good defense is to learn how to think like an attacker. So defenders actually use the same powerful tools like the Metasploit framework to run simulated attacks against their own systems. It's all about finding and fixing your own weak spots before the bad guys do. Web apps, man, they are just a huge, huge attack surface. And a tool like Burp Suite is pretty much the gold standard for testing them. It lets you get in the middle and analyze all the traffic between a browser and a server, so you can find really dangerous flaws. A lot of times people use checklists like the OWASP Top 10 to guide them. This is the kind of deep dive work you do to find things automated scanners might miss. And look, all these fancy digital defenses don't mean a thing if someone can just walk into your office and plug a device into the wall, right? That's why physical security and, especially now, IoT best practices are so incredibly important. We're talking about simple stuff that makes a huge difference. Put all your IoT gadgets on a separate network, never use the default passwords, and enforce a clean desk policy. These aren't suggestions. They're totally non-negotiable lines of defense. So that brings us to the end, and I want to leave you with a question to chew on. We've talked about all these different layers: the network, the data, the policies, the people, the physical space. Thinking about all of that, what do you think is the single most underestimated area in most organizations' security plans? What's the biggest blind spot? And more importantly, what's that one proactive step you could take that would make the biggest impact?